Long before the construction of highways and the rise of towering cities, the American continent was a vibrant patchwork of tribes and nations, each with its unique culture and wisdom. These peoples lived in profound connection with the earth, respecting every river, every tree, and every animal as integral parts of a vast and sacred spiritual network. For thousands of years, these civilizations flourished, establishing complex social, spiritual, and ecological systems that reflected their deep understanding of the world around them. They watched the stars for guidance, listened to the winds for messages from nature, and sang songs to celebrate the sacredness of life itself. But with the arrival of European colonizers, much of this ancient knowledge was lost or deliberately erased. Yet, despite this loss, echoes of their wisdom still resonate within the land, the rivers, and the hearts of many. This is the story of a knowledge that time almost made us forget, a wisdom that still lingers and whispers through the natural world, waiting for humanity to remember. It is a story of respect, balance, and spirituality, a story of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, whose voices have shaped the history of the continent. One continent, 1,000 peoples. Before foreign borders were imposed upon the land, the Americas were home to hundreds of nations, each with its own language, traditions, and understanding of the natural world. These peoples did not see the land as a mere commodity to be owned or fought over, but as a sacred entity that was meant to be cared for and protected. They believed the earth did not belong to any one person, but that everyone belonged to the earth. In the vast plains of central North America, the Lakota people followed the movements of massive bison herds, recognizing the animals as sacred beings whose presence brought sustenance and balance to their lives. In the southwestern deserts, the Puebloans constructed magnificent stone cities, their architecture harmoniously blending with the landscape as if the structures themselves had grown from the very mountains. To the north, the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, formed one of the world's first democratic systems, uniting 5 and later 6 nations in a peaceful and cooperative alliance that focused on mutual benefit. In the southern rainforests, the Tupi-Guarani peoples revered nature as an extension of the divine, with every river and mountain serving as a physical manifestation of gods and ancestors. The Inuit, living in the harshest, coldest regions, demonstrated incredible wisdom in adapting to their environment, finding food and shelter where others might have seen nothing but ice and snow. These nations didn't just survive, they thrived. Trade routes stretched across the continent, connecting tribes far and wide. Items such as Atlantic seashells found in the Great Plains and obsidian from the western mountains discovered in the east prove that these peoples were interconnected long before the advent of modern globalization. However, it wasn't just their trade networks or monumental constructions that impressed outsiders. It was their shared philosophy, an unwavering respect for the interconnectedness of all life. The peoples of the Americas understood that humanity was but one thread in the vast web of life, and that disrupting the balance between human beings and the earth would lead to chaos. The land was never seen as a wilderness to be conquered. It was a rich, diverse world shaped by those who understood that true greatness lies in living in harmony with all living things. Complex societies and governance. The indigenous peoples of the Americas were not merely tribal or primitive groups. They were highly sophisticated societies with well-organized governance systems, codes of conduct, and rituals designed to ensure harmony and the collective survival of their people. These systems were reflective of a profound wisdom about communal living, where every individual had a role to play, and their contributions were vital to the well-being of the whole. One of the most remarkable examples of governance in Native American society came from the Haudenosaunee, or Iroquois Confederacy. This group of 6 nations created a system that balanced central authority with local autonomy, making decisions through a grand council that was based on consensus. Every decision taken by the council was made with an eye toward the future, considering not only the needs of the present, but the impact on the next 7 generations. This foresight reflected their deep respect for the continuity of life and the natural world, and the importance of ensuring that decisions benefited the community for generations to come. The system also ensured that no single voice could dominate, thus preventing tyranny and ensuring that every person's perspective, whether a leader, warrior, or elder, was heard. In the Southwest, the Hopi people maintained a decentralized society where each village was governed by a council of elders. Their governance was inherently spiritual, with many decisions guided by ceremonies and signs from nature. Leadership in Hopi society was not seen as a position of power, but as a sacred responsibility entrusted to those recognized as spiritually and morally fit. The Hopi people's oral traditions ensured that the wisdom of their ancestors was passed down to each new generation, preserving both the spiritual and practical knowledge necessary for the survival of the community. On the Great Plains, the Lakota divided their society into smaller, flexible bands, each led by a chief chosen for his merit and wisdom. While larger councils made decisions about warfare or hunting, these bands were able to reorganize themselves quickly to adapt to seasonal changes or other challenges. The ability of the Lakota to change and adapt as circumstances demanded was one of the key strengths of their society, and it was this adaptability that ensured their survival in a world of constant change. In the Pacific Northwest, the Tlingit and Haida peoples built complex social structures based on clans. These clans governed many aspects of life, including the rights to land and natural resources, and were responsible for passing down stories, spiritual teachings, and customs. Their ceremonial feasts, known as potlatches, were important events in which wealth was redistributed, alliances were formed, and generosity was celebrated. These gatherings strengthened social ties, ensured that resources were shared equitably, and prevented the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. What unites all of these systems is a profound respect for cooperation, shared responsibility, and interdependence. Decisions were rarely made by a single individual. Rather, they were the result of collective deliberation, often imbued with spiritual significance. Leadership was understood as a service to the community, not a privilege, and those who led did so with the understanding that their actions would affect future generations. In many ways, these societies placed a higher value on collective well-being than on individual wealth or power. The governance systems of these peoples transcended politics in a way that most modern systems have yet to achieve. They recognized that true leadership comes from respecting life in all its forms, from honoring the land and the people who live on it, and from ensuring that the community remains strong and unified. The wisdom of these cultures, although largely suppressed or forgotten by many, can still serve as a guide for humanity today, offering valuable lessons for how to live in harmony with one another and with the natural world. Legacy and lessons for the future. The story of the indigenous peoples of the Americas is not one of defeat or nostalgia. It is a story of survival, resilience, and wisdom. Their cultures, though nearly erased by colonization, continue to influence the modern world. from environmental movements to new approaches to leadership and governance. In remembering the indigenous peoples of the Americas, we are reminded of the importance of living in balance with the earth, respecting the wisdom of the natural world, and fostering communities built on cooperation, shared responsibility, and spiritual connection. These teachings are as relevant today as they were centuries ago, offering a roadmap for how humanity might still learn to live in harmony with the earth and with each other. The knowledge of these peoples lives on, not just in the words of their elders or in the memories of their communities, but in the land itself. The earth, the rivers, the forests, and the mountains all carry the wisdom of those who came before us. The challenge now is for us to listen to those ancient whispers, to honor the lessons they have to offer, and to live in a way that reflects the deep interconnectedness of all life. Spiritual practices and connection with the divine. The spiritual practices of Native American peoples were deeply rooted in the recognition of the profound interconnectedness between the physical and spiritual realms. These cultures viewed the earth not simply as a place for human habitation, but as a living, sacred being imbued with divine essence. Every river, mountain, forest, and animal held a spiritual significance, and this sacred view of the world influenced nearly every aspect of their lives, from the rituals performed to the simple acts of daily living. In the Lakota tradition, spirituality revolved around the concept of Wakantanka, or the Great Spirit, a divine force that represented the sum of all energies in the universe. This force connected all things, binding the physical and spiritual worlds together. The Lakota people understood that everything in existence was interconnected, and through their rituals, they sought to align themselves with the cosmic order. A prominent ritual among the Lakota was the sun dance, a ceremony that symbolized both sacrifice and renewal. During this sacred event, participants would engage in hours of dancing, fasting, and prayer, connecting with the natural cycles of the world and seeking harmony for themselves and their communities. Similarly, the Hopi people believed that they were the spiritual guardians of the balance between the physical and spiritual realms. They viewed the earth as sacred and saw their role as stewards of the land. Their ceremonies, led by spiritual beings known as kachinas, were designed to honor the forces of nature, bring rain, fertility, and prosperity, and maintain harmony between all living things. The Hopi ceremonies were deeply intertwined with the natural world, and every dance, every mask, and every prayer was a manifestation of respect for the divine. Through these practices, they maintained a deep connection to the spiritual world, a connection that was passed down through generations of elders and community leaders. In the lush Amazon rainforest, the Tupi-Guarani peoples had their own profound spiritual practices, deeply linked to the concept of terra sem mals, or land without evil. For them, the land represented a state of spiritual purity and balance, a reflection of divine harmony. To connect with the gods and spirits of the forest, the Tupi-Guarani would partake in rituals involving songs, dances, and the consumption of sacred plants and forest medicines, such as ayahuasca. These rituals were not only ways to communicate with the divine, but also to heal the body and spirit. The Tupi-Guarani understood that the physical and spiritual aspects of life were inseparable, and their spiritual practices focused on maintaining a balance that promoted both individual and collective well-being. In the Pacific Northwest, peoples such as the Haida and Tlingit integrated their spirituality into art and culture, particularly in the creation of totem poles. These towering sculptures were not mere works of art, but living stories that represented the spiritual lineage, myths, and relationships with the sacred. Each figure carved into the totem poles carried a deep spiritual meaning, symbolizing connections to ancestors and the natural forces that shaped their lives. The totem poles, like the people themselves, were deeply connected to the land and its spirits, embodying the philosophy that all things, human and non-human, are sacred and interdependent. Across all these cultures, spirituality was not an isolated or separate practice. It was not something that took place only during rituals or ceremonies. Spirituality was woven into the very fabric of everyday life. Before going on a hunt, the hunters would offer prayers and rituals to thank the spirit of the animal they were about to take, acknowledging the sacredness of life. Similarly, when planting crops, farmers would sing to the earth, asking for its blessing and fertility, understanding that their survival was directly tied to the health and balance of the land. Even in the seemingly mundane tasks of building shelter or lighting a fire, spiritual rituals were performed to honor the sacredness of these acts. In addition to these everyday rituals, spiritual practices also played a crucial role in healing. Shamans, revered as the intermediaries between the human and spiritual worlds, used chants, medicinal plants, and dances to treat illnesses that were believed to be the result of spiritual imbalances. Healing was not seen merely as a physical process. It was understood as a spiritual journey that required re-establishing harmony between the body, spirit, and the natural world. These healers worked to reconnect individuals to the web of life, reminding them of their place within the larger universe and their responsibility to maintain balance. These spiritual practices offer a powerful lesson for the modern world. They invite us to consider what it would be like to live in a world where every action, every step, every word, every thought was an act of devotion. What if, like the Native American ancestors, we could live our lives with a constant awareness of the sacredness of all things? What if we could rediscover our own connection to the divine, to the earth, and to one another? The philosophy of interdependence. At the core of Native American spirituality was a philosophy that viewed the world as a vast, interconnected web. Every being, every element of nature, played a vital role in the harmonious functioning of the whole. This worldview was not merely a spiritual belief. It was a practical philosophy that shaped how Native American peoples interacted with the earth and with one another. The idea of interdependence was central to their understanding of life and survival. For the Lakota, the concept of mitakuye oyasin, or all my relations, was a profound expression of this interconnectedness. The phrase did not just refer to human beings, but encompassed all forms of life, animals, plants, and even the elements of nature, such as wind and water. The Lakota understood that every action taken, whether by an individual or a community, affected the entire web of life. To harm any part of the natural world was to harm oneself, and so they treated all life with respect and reverence. The Hopi, known as the people of peace, embodied this philosophy through their relationship with water and the arid lands of the Southwest. Their survival depended not only on human effort, but on a sacred partnership with nature. They understood that the earth was not merely a resource to be exploited, but a partner in sustaining life. Their agricultural practices were rooted in rituals that invoked the blessings of rain, and they recognized that without the cooperation of the natural world, their crops would fail and their communities would suffer. This understanding shaped their daily lives, guiding everything from farming to the sharing of food. ensuring that they lived in harmony with natural cycles. The philosophy of interdependence also extended to the past and future generations. Native American peoples did not view time as a linear progression, but as a cyclical journey. Ancestors were not distant figures, but living presences that continued to shape the world through stories, rituals, and the very land itself. Similarly, the future was not something separate from the present. Every decision made was done with future generations in mind. The Iroquois Confederacy, for example, practiced a governance system that required leaders to consider the impact of their decisions on the next 7 generations, ensuring that resources would be preserved and that the balance of nature would be maintained for those yet to come. This philosophy of interdependence was also reflected in the social organization of Native American societies. Everyone had a role to play, from the youngest children to the oldest elders. No task was too small or insignificant, and no individual was considered more important than the collective good. Survival was a community effort, and every member contributed to the well-being of the group, whether through hunting, farming, teaching, or healing. This sense of shared responsibility reinforced the understanding that individual well-being was inextricably linked to the well-being of the community and the earth. The philosophy of interdependence offers a vital lesson for the modern world. In a time when many people feel disconnected from nature and from one another, the wisdom of Native American cultures reminds us that we are not isolated beings. We are part of a vast, interconnected web of life, and our actions affect all that exists. Caring for one another and for the earth is not simply an ethical responsibility, it is a necessity for survival and prosperity. The lost wisdom and the echoes that remain. With the arrival of European colonizers, the Native American peoples faced centuries of cultural destruction, dehumanization, and loss. Their lands were invaded and destroyed, their languages silenced, and their spiritual practices banned. However, despite the tremendous hardships they endured, much of their wisdom and knowledge survived. The efforts of colonial forces to erase their cultures could not extinguish the essence of the teachings passed down through generations. During the 19th century, policies such as forced assimilation programs and boarding schools in the United States and Canada sought to strip Native American children of their heritage. They were forbidden from speaking their languages or practicing their spiritual traditions. Yet, in secret, many families continued to pass down their knowledge, preserving their cultures despite the oppressive forces they faced. The Lakota people, for example, kept the practice of the sun dance alive as a form of cultural resistance, symbolizing renewal and spiritual connection. Today, this sacred ceremony stands as a testament to the resilience of indigenous traditions and the enduring strength of their spiritual practices. The Hopi, too, preserved their prophecies, which warn of the dangers of straying from the sacred balance between humanity and nature. They believe that the environmental and social challenges we face today are a direct result of neglecting this sacred relationship. The Hopi prophecies have become a guiding light for those seeking to restore harmony with the earth, offering hope rooted in respect, cooperation, and collective responsibility. The wisdom of Native American peoples continues to echo through the modern world, inspiring movements for environmental justice, sustainability, and social equality. Their teachings remind us that true progress lies not in the reckless exploitation of the earth, but in living in balance with all forms of life. By listening to the echoes of the past and learning from the wisdom of indigenous cultures, we can create a future that honors the earth, the ancestors, and the generations yet to come. As many Native American cultures believed, what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. The time has come for us to rediscover this ancient wisdom and walk forward with greater awareness, gratitude, and reverence for all